My name is Willa Bryant. I'm 36 years old, and I live in a quiet suburb about an hour outside of Portland. Far enough from noise, close enough to remember why I left it behind. The sentence that changed my life wasn't shouted. It wasn't dramatic. It was said calmly, almost casually, across a polished conference table by my own father. "We need builders, not Girl Scouts. You don't belong here." That was the last strategy meeting I was ever invited to. I remember the room in precise detail. The long walnut table, the muted hum of the air conditioner, my mother sitting at the far end pretending to review spreadsheets she already knew by heart. I remember how my younger brother, Nolan, leaned back in his chair, hands folded behind his head, already confident he'd won. He was presenting a resort development in Red Rock. On paper, it looked impressive. Big numbers, aggressive timelines, investors would eat it up. But I wasn't looking at the numbers. I was looking at what wasn't there. No wastewater contingency, no sustainable material sourcing, no environmental impact buffer, despite new state regulations. I'd been quiet at first. I always was. 3 years working unpaid at the family company had taught me that silence was safer than honesty. But as Nolan kept talking, something tightened in my chest. When he finished, I spoke. "Are we still planning to use red sand mixed concrete from Arizona?" I asked. "And what's the wastewater plan? I don't see it listed." Nolan shrugged, unfazed. "The town's treatment plant can handle it." I put my pen down, slowly. "It's been over capacity since last year," I said. "If Jenkins finds out, this project gets shut down before ground breaks." My father's gaze snapped to me. "You saying Nolan doesn't know what he's doing?" I swallowed. "I'm saying he didn't check thoroughly. And if we move forward like this, we're risking lawsuits that could bury the company." Nolan laughed, soft, deliberate. "Typical," he said. "Always waiting for a chance to tear someone down." I met his eyes. "I'm trying to keep us from going bankrupt over a plan that reads like a kid playing with Legos." The room went still. Then my father leaned forward, fingers tapping the table as if delivering a verdict he'd rehearsed for years. "We need builders, not Girl Scouts," he said evenly. "You don't belong here." I stood up. "I'm leaving this company today." My father didn't blink. "Go ahead. You won't get a dime from me. And when I'm gone, everything goes to Nolan." Something in me finally cracked, but not loudly. "I worked here for 3 years," I said. "Who paid for your education?" he shot back. "Your car? Your roof?" I laughed, bitter, tired. "So the price of being fed," I asked quietly, "is silence?" He didn't answer. An hour later, I was in my childhood bedroom, packing only what mattered. Clothes, a sketchbook, my black notebook, the one filled with designs he never once asked to see. By sunset, I rolled my suitcase down the front steps with $20,000 to my name, and a blueprint no one had bothered to look at. As my car crossed this gate, I knew one thing. I would never again build my life in a place where I needed permission to exist. I drove without a destination. That was the strangest part, how calm I felt behind the wheel while everything else in my life had just detonated. The highway stretched out in front of me like a clean slate, mile after mile of trees and sky. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call anyone. I let the silence do what it needed to do. 2 days later, with the tank running low and my thoughts finally catching up to me, I pulled into a small town on the edge of Oregon. No skyline, no glass towers, just leaf-covered roads, a handful of wooden storefronts, and a gas station that looked like it hadn't changed since the late 90s. I didn't choose the town because it was special. I chose it because it didn't know me. Behind an old house at the edge of town, I saw a small wooden shed, crooked roof, peeling paint, sagging floorboards. It looked forgotten, passed over, exactly how I felt. The owner was an elderly man named Ron, retired carpenter, thick hands, quiet eyes. I asked if I could rent the shed. He didn't ask where I was from, didn't ask what I planned to do. He just looked at the structure, then back at me. "That place could use someone to breathe life back into it," he said. That was the closest thing to permission I needed. The shed was a mess, rotting beams, leaks in the roof, electrical wiring that made me wince. But it was mine, or at least it could be. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. I tore out what was unsafe, patched what could be saved, built a desk from reclaimed wood I found behind Ron's workshop, hung a whiteboard on the wall, no sign outside, no clients, no staff. Just me, my laptop, and the notebook I'd carried since college. For the first time in years, no one told me what was practical or marketable. No one scoffed at the words sustainable or small scale like they were a liability instead of a philosophy. By day, I studied eco-friendly materials. By night, I drafted designs on outdated software I'd once been told was unprofessional. I wasn't dreaming of resorts or awards. I wasn't chasing validation. I just wanted to build homes that let people breathe. I started a blog, not to promote myself, just to document the process, the mistakes, the lessons, the feeling of fixing something broken with your own hands. A week later, I got an email. A final year architecture student. Male, nervous, earnest. I've never seen anyone design homes that feel this close to nature and this close to people. I read that line 3 times. Not because I didn't believe it, but because after years of being dismissed, someone finally saw me. That was how Green Nest Studio began. Not as a company, as a conviction. I didn't choose the name because it sounded trendy. I chose it because a nest is small, protective, enough, and green because anything we call home should work with nature, not against it. My first clients were an older couple, the Millers. They didn't want a mansion, just sunlight in the kitchen, a window that faced the garden she'd tended for 10 years. When the house was finished, Mrs. Miller cried on the porch. A month later, 2 more clients came, by referral. Green Nest grew quietly, slowly, like roots pushing through dry soil. Somewhere in the middle of that first year, I met Ethan. He wasn't impressed by my work in the way my family had always demanded admiration. He didn't talk over me or offer unsolicited fixes. He listened. He showed up with coffee when I worked late. He believed in what I was building without needing to take credit for it. That mattered more than I realized at the time. 6 months in, a small design magazine quoted my blog. Then a conference invite. I showed up with an old backpack and phone photos, no slideshow, no polish. I just told the truth. About Ron's shed, about the intern, about the woman who cried over a garden window. When the room stood to applaud, I didn't feel proud. I felt free. I hadn't proven anything to my father. I'd proven it to myself. Green Nest didn't explode onto the scene. It didn't trend. It didn't get fast money or flashy investors. It grew the way real things grow, quietly, stubbornly, with roots you couldn't see, until they were already holding the ground together. After the Miller's house, the referrals came slowly but steadily. A teacher who wanted a 1-bedroom cottage she could afford on a single income. A retired mechanic who wanted a home he could heat without choosing between warmth and groceries. Every project was small, intentional, personal. I did the designs myself, chose materials myself, walked the sites myself. Some nights I slept on a fold-out cot in the workshop because driving back felt like wasted time I could spend fixing one more detail. And every time someone asked why I hadn't scaled faster, I smiled and said the truth. I'm not building products, I'm building places people live inside. The blog kept growing. I posted experimental designs, not for clients, but for learning. How rain moved across a roof line, how light behaved in winter, how walls felt when they were built from real wood instead of synthetic panels. One morning, an email arrived from a local architecture network that partnered with housing nonprofits. 3 model homes, temporary shelter before winter, low budget, tight timeline. I didn't ask what they'd pay. I said yes before finishing the email. Those 3 homes nearly broke us. Long days, frozen fingers, materials delayed. But when the families moved in, when kids ran through rooms that were warm and solid, I remembered exactly why I'd left everything behind. A week later, a young reporter from a sustainable living magazine drove out to the workshop. No crew, no camera lights, just questions. Why small homes? Why not chase luxury? Why obsess over details no one notices? We talked for 2 hours under the porch roof, wind moving through the pines behind us. I told her the truth. Because a home isn't a status symbol. It's where people rest when the world stops asking things of them. The article ran under the title, The Zero Energy Home and the Woman Behind It. For the first time, someone called me an architect, not an assistant, not support, not background. An invitation followed, then another. Conferences, panels, a symposium in Europe focused on ecological housing. 3 years after leaving my family, I stood on a stage in Berlin, not because my work was the biggest, but because it was honest. Through all of it, Ethan stayed exactly the same. He never asked me to slow down, never made my work feel like competition. When his ex-girlfriend reached out, subtle messages, nostalgia disguised as concern, he shut it down without drama. She doesn't get access to my present, he said. She gave that up. I didn't realize how rare that kind of certainty was until I'd lived without it for so long. 5 years passed. Green Nest grew into a team of over 50 designers, interns, clean energy consultants. I still walk the workshop every morning, still use the same phone number, same email. Not because I was waiting for my family, but because I wasn't hiding anymore. They never called. Not when awards came, not when articles spread internationally, not once. I thought I'd made peace with that. Then, on a quiet Friday afternoon, my phone rang, and on the screen was a name I hadn't seen in 5 years. Mom. Everything went still. I knew, before answering, that whatever she wanted had nothing to do with me, and everything to do with what I'd built without them. I answered the phone without saying hello. On the other end, my mother's voice trembled, thin, rushed, like she was afraid silence might make me disappear again. Willa, it's Mom. Your father had a stroke last week. He's in the ICU. I closed my eyes, fingers tightening around my keys. She kept talking, words spilling faster now. Nolan's out of options. The lawyers are threatening to sue the company for breach of contract. If we can't secure financing, they'll seize the assets. There it was. Not how have you been? Not, I'm sorry, just urgency. Can you help? She asked. Just for a while. I didn't answer. I hung up. The next morning, I was standing outside the ICU, staring through thick glass at a man who looked nothing like the father who'd once filled a room with certainty. Half his face sagged. Tubes ran where words used to be. I didn't go in. My mother approached holding a thick folder, coat too thin for the season. She didn't hug me. She didn't ask how long I'd driven. She held out the folder. They need someone to co-sign the loan, she said. Just temporarily. I flipped through the pages. Numbers, legal language, and then Collateral, Green Nest Studio. I closed the folder slowly. You're using my company as collateral for a $2 million loan? Her hand shook. Before she could answer, a familiar voice cut in. Relax. It's just a formality. Nolan stood behind her, older, thinner, still wearing confidence like armor. As long as your name is on it, the bank approves it faster, he said. Once things stabilize, you pull out. No one's touching Green Nest. I laughed, sharp, humorless. You think I'm stupid? I asked quietly. Silence. Where's the house? I continued. The land? The cars? Why isn't any of that collateral? My mother glanced sideways. Nolan looked down. I nodded. They're gone. No one argued. You didn't come to me because you missed me, I said. You came because you needed a clean name to cover your mess. 5 years of absence, 5 years of silence, and now this. I'm not signing, I said. Family isn't a place where love means sacrificing yourself for people who wouldn't do the same. I turned and walked away. They called after me. I didn't stop. After the hospital, I didn't block their numbers. I just stopped feeling the need to answer. At first, there was a faint echo of guilt, something old and automatic, trained into me long before I knew how to question it. But guilt needs hope to survive. And once I accepted the truth that I had never been more than a backup plan, it faded on its own. A month later, I was in Berlin, standing inside a glass exhibition hall, filled with polished models and expensive promises. I placed my own piece on the table quietly. A small home model built entirely from reclaimed wood. Simple lines, no branding. I called it the Unbought House. It wasn't meant to impress, it was meant to endure. When the symposium ended, a journalist approached me, middle-aged, thoughtful eyes. He didn't ask about awards or growth metrics. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Not going back, not saving your family. I looked at the model between us, then at him. I tried to stay, I said calmly. They were the ones who let me go first. I just chose to hold on to myself. That night, I walked back to my hotel alone, not lonely, just complete. I moved shortly after into a small house tucked into the woods near my studio. I still draw every morning, still teach students, still take projects that matter. Green Nest remains independent, no outside control, no conditions. Because I know now, if I ever let someone else decide my worth again, I might lose myself all over. If you've ever been pushed aside, only to be called back when you became useful, this isn't a story about revenge. It's about peace. And sometimes, peace costs you people who were never willing to pay the price to keep you.